Well, 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 the lazy eye of the God Emperor has finally turned towards Silicon Valley's tech giants. I'm continuing to monitor the censorship of American citizens on social media platforms. This is the United States of America, and we have what is known as freedom of speech. We are monitoring and watching closely. Twitter should let the banned conservative voices back onto their platform without restriction. It's called freedom of speech, remember. You are making a giant mistake. To be honest, the comments under any Trump tweet are gold. The man who calls the New York Times and CNN fake news thinks Twitter should be more lenient towards conspiracy theories from Russian bots and Alex Jones. Oh my god, how Russophobic of you. Conservatives are caught out on this site, granted special protection out of fear of cries of bias. Everyone else can get banned for minor infractions or phony reports, but conservatives get to ignore the rules until one goes so far there's a huge backlash. This is verifiably not true, as evidenced by Jack's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast. For example, when Tim Pool brought up that Twitter has codified in its terms of service misgendering speech as a violation of the rules, he was making the point that Twitter has taken an issue that is not agreed upon by everybody, but instead has a distinct political bias, and presented it as if it were something neutral like violent content or legitimate threats. Freedom of speech does not equal freedom of reach. I know you're upset over the Kremlin nonsense machines being deplatformed. Too bad. Follow basic rules of civility or be stuck with the toxic waste dump known as Gab. Simple. Even though most of this comment is trash, there's still a good point here. Freedom of speech is not freedom of reach. Twitter also has free speech rights in the United States. And a solid argument for Twitter's ability to censor its users is that if Twitter was forced to allow speech from users it disagrees with, that would be compelled speech for them. So yes, freedom of speech does not mean freedom of reach. The counter-argument, of course, is that would we really accept it if, say, a phone company cut off service to somebody because of the political opinions they espoused to another person using their service? I mean, probably not, but more importantly, the ability to even do so would require a massive overreach on the part of the phone company, because they would have to monitor every single use of their service for content they'd want to ban. This is why wiretapping a phone line is considered illegal in most circumstances. During my dumping with Scrump on the still unfolding Carlos Maza, Steven Crowder situation, and I'm sorry I haven't done a full video on it yet, the E3 streams are eating up all my time right now, I mentioned that the Digital Millennium Copyright Act has what is known as a safe harbor exception. Let's go into that a little bit. In layman's terms, a publisher is a group that has the right to actively accept or reject submissions from outside contributors, and has the legal responsibility for everything they publish. Contrast this with a platform, which has no legal responsibility for what is published by its users, but in return it has to make a good faith attempt to censor, delete, and report to the authorities content that breaks the law, like child pornography or human trafficking or legitimate threats or incitement or copyright infringement. And their ability to curate content extends only as far as that good faith attempt. So a newspaper or a news outlet would be a publisher, able to pick and choose what it wants published, but responsible for it all. If the company publishes threats, they face the lawsuit. And a telephone company would be a platform, not responsible for any crimes committed using their service, but required to cooperate with authorities if there's reasonable suspicion against somebody. It's not that simple, of course, but that's the basic breakdown. All of the big tech giants like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube are currently considered platforms, and thus they have the safe harbor exception under the DMCA. They're not legally liable for the things that their users put out, but they have extensive systems in place to intercept or delete anything that breaks US law. Except, as we've seen, they go much farther than that. They go for hate speech, or dehumanizing speech, or misgendering speech like Twitter, or humiliation like YouTube. Basically, much, much farther than a platform's theoretical ability to curate should allow them. And you'll notice that when they do it, they try to make it appear as legal as they can. They'll say that hate speech leads to real-world violence, that misgendering kills trans people, that humiliation leads to incitement, etc., etc. The social justice underlings who chant violence is speech do so because they want to shut up anybody who doesn't agree with them, sure. But I don't think they're smart enough to understand that big tech only sides with them because their line of thought places the social media giants in a privileged position. That's why, as far as the verified journalists are concerned, Facebook isn't responsible for the massive amounts of violence live streamed on its platform, but when a shooter posts on Gab that they're about to blow away a synagogue, it's Gab that's at fault, even though on paper, they both have the same legal rights as platforms. So when Trump says, "we're watching," I'm sure the radical lefties who spend all day glued to their Twitter feeds simply chalk it up as another stupid remark from Cheeto Voldemort. And yeah, Trump probably doesn't know what he should do to prevent conservative censorship. I'm not even sure if I know what should be done. But I guarantee you, the minute Trump sits down with his staff and says, "Okay, we need to do something about this. What ideas do you have?" somebody in the room will be knowledgeable enough to bring up the DMCA and the safe harbor exception. The social media oligarchs know this, and they are shitting bricks. There's two choices for them. Become publishers, and suddenly face millions of lawsuits every time some idiot makes a post that is somehow illegal. Or stop censoring people and calling it curation, or improving conversational health, or whatever. Free speech is not just part of the First Amendment. The First Amendment only ensures that the government will not impede free speech. But free speech is much larger than that. It's a natural right, inherent to all people, regardless of any law, any country, any border. All of you hardcore radical socialists on the left, who suddenly turn into ANCAPs when commoners begin to question giving big tech unlimited control over the online public square? Well, the First Amendment is only one pillar of many that the government uses to ensure freedom of speech. If you don't shape up, you're going to get hit with the rest of them.